First, I'd like a motion to approve the agenda. Second for the motion, please.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Second on, or first on the agenda after that is approval of minutes of February 25th, 2019 Anderson Township Zoning Commission. Do I have a motion for the approval of those minutes?
There was one change that Ms. DiBaggio pointed out, and that has been corrected. Okay. It was the
motion for the case. It said Ms. McBride moved and seconded, whereas Ms. McBride moved and Ms. DiBaggio seconded.
Okay. All right. Any other revisions to the minutes? Okay. The attendees, if you could make a motion to approve.
I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes from the February 25th, 2019 Zoning Commission meeting.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Could you call roll, please?
Mr. Henson? Here. Ms. DiBaggio?
Aye.
Ms. McBride?
Aye.
Mr. Ellis?
Abstain.
Mr. Gothard?
Abstain. First case is case number 1-2019 PUD. For some of our cases tonight, we will have sworn testimony. So anyone that would like to provide testimony to any case tonight, we ask you to stand and raise your right hand to be sworn in by staff. Could you swear me? Okay. Do you swear that all testimony and comments and statements made tonight are the truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay. Thank you very much. So with the first case, it is a quasi-judicial hearing. I'm going to read sort of an outline of the rules and regulations, so to speak, that we'll be following tonight. That applies to the commission and also to anyone giving testimony and also the general audience. So first, I'll outline the procedures that we're following. Under the zoning resolution, our decision is subject to appeal by the Board of Township Trustees and then to the Court of Common Pleas. As a result, we must employ different procedures from other cases that are typically presented to the Zoning Commission. Because this is a quasi-judicial proceeding, the Commission will only receive evidence as to whether the application meets or does not meet the standards and criteria in the zoning resolution. We do not want to hear opinions, just facts. As a result, all persons presenting testimony before the Commission, whether for or against the applicant's position, may only do so after being sworn in and being subject to cross-examination. The staff will present a summary of the application. The applicant will then present its case. The board members may ask questions of the staff and anyone who speaks on behalf of the applicant. If an attorney presents the case for the applicant, the attorney is not sworn in and is not considered to be a witness. As a result, the attorney's statements are not considered as evidence. Evidence only comes in through the witnesses who testify before the commission after being sworn in. The burden is on the applicant to present the evidence that the application satisfies the standards and criteria for approval. After the applicant presents its case through its witnesses, all persons in the audience supporting the application will be permitted to testify, one at a time, after being recognized by the chairperson. When all persons supporting the application are finished, those opposed to the application will then be permitted to testify after being recognized by the chairperson. If anyone in opposition is represented by attorney, that party will go first, followed by any members of the audience. As stated previously, all persons wishing to testify, whether for or against the application, may only do so after being sworn in. When testifying, each person from the audience must come forward to the podium after being recognized, speak into the microphone, state their name, address, and any affiliation to the case. All persons testifying will be limited to 3 minutes unless a commission member requests that they be given additional time. All testimony is directed to the commission only. No comments or questions are to be directed to the applicant or anyone else in the audience. The commission will only hear new, non-repetitive evidence or questions. Should someone wish to show support of previous statements and testimony, they may do so by following the testimony procedures and stating their support of previous testimony. Now, with all persons we have already sworn in, if anyone has entered this that have not been sworn in that will be giving testimony or speaking tonight, if you could please again rise and raise your right hand. Okay. Do you swear to tell the truth and the whole truth for any statements that you may give tonight? Okay. Thank you very much. With that, Mr. Drury.
So just a couple of housekeeping items. Item number 4 on the agenda, this is a continuation of Case 2, 2019 PUD. This is at 6685 Salem Road. The applicant has requested a continuance until the April 22nd Zoning Commission meeting. So if you were here for that one, that has been continued until next month. We will hear at least the first 3 items on the agenda. Cincinnati Used Auto and the 2 zone change requests, Mount Washington Care Center, and then Wings and Rings. Then most likely, depending on time, we will take just a short break and then continue with the 3 PUD cases. So I just wanted to let you all know that. There is a play at 7 o'clock, so if you do leave and come back, keep that in mind. You might lose your parking spot. There will be a shuttle. But just to keep that in mind, the restrooms are across the hallway. The format of the meeting, again, as Mr. Chair stated, I will give a presentation from the staff. The applicant will come up, make their presentation, and then we'll take testimony and comments from the audience. So with that, the first case is a continuation of Case 1, 2019 PUD, which is Cincinnati Used Auto. The applicant is Imad Sadiq, Troy Sadiq, and Steve Schlagbaum for Imad and Haim Sadiq, who are the property owners. Location is at 8260 Beachmont Avenue, and the zoning there is E-Retail. The request is for an expansion of their existing parking lot by 12,500 square feet. This increases the impervious surface ratio to 78%, which requires a review by our zoning commission as a PUD. The past 2 months, this has been brought before the zoning commission, and we'll just briefly go over the request. The area, okay, so the area for the expansion is a shaded area on the plan. Originally, there was a variance request for a 5-foot setback in the rear property. That has been removed from the plan. The setback is 10 feet, which is compliant with our zoning regulations, so the variance request has been dropped. There was concern over compliance with fire code violations and zoning violations. There is a letter from Assistant Fire Chief Bob Herlinger in your packet stating that a reinspection has occurred of the property and they are in compliance with fire code issues. Planning and zoning did an inspection to verify compliance with zoning. All the cars were removed from the back parking area in the grass. And those were really the 2 outstanding issues left over from the last meeting. We'll just go over the photos real quick. I did want to show you the photos. This was taken March the 13th of the rear area. Did you have any questions for staff?
We'll start on this end.
Just asking questions.
Yes, any questions?
No
of
questions,
staff?
thank you.
Ms. McBride, any questions? Ms. DiBaggio, any questions of staff?
I just want to, because they reduced the amount of impervious material, but they managed to keep the parking count the same. I want to make sure that they are still meeting parking regulations, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
All right, thank you. That's it.
Any questions?
No questions.
Thank you very much. Anyone like to speak on behalf of the applicant? Again, please state your name, address, and affiliation to the case.
Steve Schlagbaum, 7335 Shawnee Run Road, Cincinnati, Ohio, 45243. Everything Mr. Drury has is re-summarized is pretty much covered it. I didn't want to regurgitate everything we had. I just want to make sure that you were up to date on the fact that the plans had been revised, withdrawing the 5-foot variance application, and redistributed the landscaping accordingly. Fire department, I think, was the question from last month, along with zoning's inspection. So I think we've got everything covered, unless you've got additional questions for me or Tammy.
Anyone from the commission have questions of the applicant?
I do not.
Okay.
I just have one question, and to be honest, I'm not sure if it's going to you or to your wife. The question is this: it states in here that you had great difficulty in finding wholesale plants that were over 6 foot tall. So it's my understanding, or our understanding then, that you will try, but if you cannot, you're going to be putting in trees that are only to 6 feet tall. Is that correct?
If you could please state your name and address also.
Tammy Schlagbaum, 7335 Shawnee Run Road, Cincinnati, Ohio, 45243. Yes, what I did is I did a wholesale search in Indiana, Ohio, and Kentucky to find out what the availability in stock was regarding size of plant material. There were a couple situations where I could find some 2.8 and 2.10. I did not want to state on the planting plan that we would be able to put in 10-foot high trees and not be able to do that. So the intent would be to be able to provide the opportunity. Code requires it to be 6 feet. If we can get a taller plant material for the evergreens, then we would do that. And those heights are primarily, as you identified, for the two evergreens that we had on the plan.
Thank you for the clarification. That's it for me.
Thank you. Ms. McBride? All right.
Nope. No, thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak in favor of the applicant? Anyone like to speak in opposition of the application? Seeing no hands. Commission, any discussion amongst ourselves?
No, I think that the applicant answered all the questions that I had with regards to zoning violations and fire code violations, and I think there was concern on the commission about the reduction from the 10 feet to the 5 feet, given the fact that it's single family to the rear.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay. Anyone like to make a motion, please?
I would make a motion that we approve case 1-2019 PUD based on staff's recommendations and the revisions that have been made by the applicant, with the additional condition that vehicles be located only in marked parking stalls.
Thank you. A second.
I'll second.
Okay. Could you call roll, please?
Mr. Henson?
Aye.
Ms. DeBride?
Aye.
Ms. McBride?
Aye.
Mr. Ellis?
Aye.
Mr. Gothard?
Aye. Thank you very much. Okay, now we'll go to item number 5 on the agenda, which is case 1-2019, property located at 8501 Beachmont Avenue. Staff, please.
I have to excuse myself from hearing this one.
Okay.
I'll be right back.
Thank you, Mr. Ellis.
Sorry, I had my packet out of order.
That's okay. I've been sorting mine tonight too.
So this is case 1, 2019 Anderson. The applicant is Tom Davis of Buffalo Wings and Rings Real Estate LLC on behalf of Feldy Boys LLC and TP White and Sons Company property owners. The location is at 8501 Beachmont Avenue, and the zoning is E retail, E PUD, which is retail plan unit development, C residence, single family, and C PUD, single family plan unit development. The request is a zone change to EE, which is planned business district. The applicant is requesting a zone change to construct 2 buildings, one 2-story, approximately 19,440 square foot corporate office building toward the rear of the property, which would house the headquarters of Buffalo Wings and Rings. 60 parking spaces are provided for this particular use. A second one-story building, approximately 4,300 square foot, the use not necessarily defined yet, that would be located on the front of the property, and 29 parking spaces are proposed for this building. This building would either be an office type use or a retail type use. There's also a 25-foot by 32-foot three-car garage that is proposed for the owner's personal use, and the current site would, or the current office, or the current building, which is the Identity Salon, would be removed. The last use on the site was Identity Hair Salon, which closed in 2018. The Zoning Commission did approve a PUD on this site for an expanded parking area. This was in 2008. However, the front portion of the parking lot was added onto. The rear portion was never constructed. This is the site in question. This is the former Identity Salon, and then the vacant piece, which is formerly owned by TP White. This is the aerial of the site. So surrounding uses, Montgomery Cyclery to the west. There's a mix of uses across the street of retail. And then to the east is Graders, which is currently under redevelopment and under construction for both of these buildings here. This is the topography map. As you can see, the site slopes toward the south or toward the rear of the site. This is the current zoning map. The E is some portion of retail. Again, there is a PUD on the old Identity site. The yellow is residential zoning, and there is a small office parcel off of Pamela. This is the site plan that was proposed. The site is approximately 2.5 acres. It has 195 feet of frontage on Beachmont Avenue. The case history, there was a zone change application filed. Well, let me back up. There was a pre-submittal meeting held on February the 28th, 2019. The items brought up at that pre-submittal meeting, well, I'm getting ahead of myself. We'll go through the photos first. So this is the site plan, which we'll come back to and describe. These are the site photos. This is looking east on Beachmont Avenue toward the Graders construction. This is looking west toward Montgomery Cyclery. This is the existing building on the site, again looking south from Beachmont Avenue. The majority of the parking for Identity was behind the building. This is the existing parking. This is the wooded area toward the south of the site itself. This is the area between that it was wooded. These homes are on Sunmont. These are the homes that are directly south of the site. The site, they had conducted some soil testing. That's where you see where the trees were removed to get back into that area to do the soil testing. So let's go back to the site plan. So this is the site plan that they are proposing. Again, the front building is a smaller building. This is Beachmont Avenue here. The front building would be a smaller office building or retail building, and they have proposed a drive-through with this building. The larger building in the back would be the office headquarters with parking in the middle of the two buildings. There is some parking along Beachmont Avenue. The proposal is also showing cross-access, at least via easement and on paper, to properties to the east and to the west. The stormwater detention is proposed to the south of the property, along with a buffer, a mound, slight mound, and some landscaping. So as stated earlier, these are the elevation drawings of the proposed building. So on February the 28th, 2019, this was the pre-submittal meeting that was held with neighbors. Some of the concerns that were brought up at that meeting were stormwater, property values with the office building in close proximity to the residential properties on Sunmont, building placement, especially with the office building in relation to the homes on Sunmont, and then the current zoning along Beachmont is E-retail, but the southern portion of the site was zoned single family, so there were concerns of that changing. and then environmental degradation of the site itself. On March the 7th, the application was heard by Hamilton County Regional Planning Commission. The Hamilton County Regional Planning Commission made a motion for approval with 8 conditions, which are in the staff report. One thing I did mention, or I forgot to mention earlier, I think we ran out of staff reports out on the table. So they are on our website. If you want to access our website on your smart device, go under zoning committees, zoning commission, and you should be able to find it there. The commission, Regional Planning Commission, they made a vote of 3-1. Those were the only members that were present at that meeting, and their bylaws require a vote of 4 affirmative votes to pass. So this actually was denied at the Regional Planning Commission because the motion was made and a vote was made of 3-1. So these were the conditions in the motion. For a zone change, we look at zoning compliance. We also look at the township's adopted plans, and we evaluate the proposal based on consistency with the township's adopted plans. So there were several items that were not in compliance with zoning. One were the parking stalls themselves. The lighting plan was not submitted. Hamilton County engineer requires a dedication of right-of-way with any zone change. A right-of-way of 60 feet from the center line is required, and this was not shown on their plan. So that does impact the front yard setback of the building as well as the parking area on the front of the plan. So that was also not consistent with zoning. The other agencies commented that there is sewer availability, and then the other agencies either had no comment or had their general statements for all zone changes. So as far as compliance with the Anderson plan, staff looked at economic development and land use. The future land use plan does identify the site for retail, so the land use is consistent. The land use plan also does require and it strongly encourages a separation of uses. So although the entire site was identified for retail, that doesn't necessarily mean the entire site should be used for retail, but appropriate buffer between the single family and an office or / retail is required and is encouraged. The Beachmont plan identifies for cross access to the adjacent properties, and the applicant is proposing that. This also falls within neighborhood 6, which identifies contemporary architecture. The applicant is proposing contemporary architecture. Design guidelines, site planning. There, at the open house meeting and at regional planning commission meeting, there was a lot of discussion on the placement of the office building, whether it's desired to be toward the south part of the site, closer to the residents, or is it preferred to move the building closer to Beachmont and have parking adjacent to single family. The applicant submitted a plan showing the building closer to the residents with a detention basin and some mounding and landscaping to separate the two, and the parking between the two buildings on Beachmont. The thought was that the building itself could act as a buffer to Beachmont Avenue to shield some of the noise from Beachmont, and then to also shield noise from the parking area. With discussion with regional planning, there were mixed emotions of whether it would be better to have the parking closer to the residents, and it may provide for better privacy. The homes on Sunmont only have a rear yard setback of 30 feet. The majority of them are right at 30 feet, so they are very close. It's a very dense development. And having an office building, the original design had it at 60 feet from the property line. So having a 2-story office building that close to a house, even though the houses could be 35 feet in that zoning district, there is a difference in the massing of an office building versus the massing of a single family. So the applicant has submitted a plan on Thursday showing an alternative design. However, staff hasn't had a chance to review that fully and make a recommendation to you. So that will probably be brought up by the applicant of which scenario is a better scenario. Lighting, again, a lighting plan was not submitted. architecture of the design is a contemporary. Trails and walkway plan, there is a sidewalk proposed along Beachmont Avenue connecting to the future graders and also showing a sidewalk connection from the street to both buildings, the building in the front and the building to the back. And then the Economic Development Committee did submit a letter really reiterating the importance. They were supportive of the zone change, provided that an appropriate setback and buffer are provided to the residents to protect their property values and to provide appropriate separation. So staff does recommend approval of the zone change if the two uses, can be separated and are compatible with each other. So I'll be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Drury. Mr. Henson, any questions of staff?
Real quick. Paul, considering the complementary nature of office and retail and the location next to graders, it does seem that there's like a very good opportunity to use the existing access that Graders is working on with their reconstruction. Is it feasible that we could reduce one of these curb cuts and with an easement provide sole access through Graders?
So there's a potential, and it's not real clear on this plan, but this access into Graders is a in only, and it is a restricted left turn. Let's see here. It's a restricted. It was intended to be right only into the site. Restricted left turns in. This access over here would be a full access drive. So there is a potential if this access were approved and went in that this could possibly be eliminated, and that is something that ODOT may potentially, evaluate. The cross access toward the rear definitely would help that situation.
Any other questions,
I don't
Mr.
have any
Henson?
more.
Ms. DiBaggio?
A question about the approval in 2008 for the parking lot expansion, even though it wasn't done. Where exactly was that supposed to go? And then are we still bound by that approval?
So the parking, yeah. So it was only on the identity site. There was a vacant piece here. It was to take their existing lot in the back and expand it almost out to the property lines, and it would have added another row of parking. With this, it would be a complete zone change. Everything is a zone change, so we're starting over from scratch.
Okay, thank you. That's it for me.
Ms. McBride, any questions of staff?
Yeah, the only question that I had was there any thought given to taking the rear of it to O as opposed to EE, since it's an office building? I mean, I think from a zoning transition, EE to O to residential is more palatable than, and it provides assurance as to what can go in there.
We encourage the applicant to go with the planned retail. So the question was there consideration given to the applicant for rezoning to OO planned office versus planned retail business? And staff guided them to planned retail because we felt that it would be one parcel. The parcels would be consolidated, and the comprehensive plan identified this entire parcel for retail. So we were going with the recommendations of the comprehensive plan, and there were two uses proposed for the site, not knowing what the front building would actually be, whether it would be office or retail. And we would encourage retail on Beachmont anyway. It's just that separation between the office building in the back. The one guarantee would be the final development plan. So whatever is approved, if it is approved, final development plan and the planned district would help give assurances that that use would be. If it wasn't that use, it'd have to go back through the process again.
All right. Any other questions of staff from the commission? Okay, if the applicant would like to come forward, state your name, address, and present your case, please.
Good evening. Bear with me a little bit. I'm having some allergy problems. If you can't hear me, let me know. My name's Tom Davis. I'm Director of Construction with Buffalo Wings and Rings. Staff has given you what we're proposing. We are a franchise restaurant company. This would be our corporate office. We have about 30 employees right now and looking to grow. So we'd like to grow in a nice area and do this. We do have a small retail or bank building or something. We do not have any intentions right now of doing anything up front, but would like to have that capability later down the road on that end of it. As far as Hamilton County and the staff here, we have no problems what everybody's recommending. We will submit full plans for everything as far as stormwater, anything else, lighting will be all turned in so that we do not affect anybody outside the property. The parking garage, like I said, is just for our owners. They have some antique cars and like to have some place to keep them. Other than that, we do have the dumpsters up front, trying to keep noise down to a minimum. And other than that, if you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer them.
Mr. Henson, any questions of the applicant?
Not any questions per se, but I would be interested in seeing the revised plan or the alternative plan for the building.
I have Mark Burgess, my engineer, with me tonight. Bring his plans. It's not 100%. What we did was we slid the building forward and moved it over to the east. So I definitely need a variance on the side yard setback to be able to do this. We lengthened the building to get the square footage we need for the amount of office space we'll need. But it did allow me to get the building about 200 feet from the rear parking line. Pushing the parking that direction, which is what our concern was to begin with, the parking is now 74 feet from the back property line. Also, that it gave us enough room to get substantial landscaping back there and a berm. I would have to put my underground stormwater underground. I don't have a retention basin back there. We would have to take the expense of putting that underground and maybe able to park over the top of it. Do y'all have any questions on that layout?
Just a quick question. It seems like you're probably also changing the orientation of the building, so would there be Beachmont frontage signage?
Right. We did have to turn the building sideways and lengthen it, like I said, just to make it work in there, to be able to get access back in there and all that. So we've played with this a little bit and played with it a lot, trying to get all that worked out. Trying to listen to some of the concerns and also get us what we need for an office building.
Probably echoing comments you've already heard, and it really does seem like a more preferable location and orientation of the entire site for the residences, considering the hardship of the headlights
was our concern originally, was while we pulled the building back, was trying to screen some of the residents, but then there was some concern about the building being there. And that's why we went back and looked at this, moving it forward, but then that puts the parking closer that direction. We do have it well screened in the back with the berm and everything, and with a substantial amount of trees back there, which we'll do and all that. Like I said, it did have stormwater underground under the parking, but it did answer some of the concerns. One of the concerns I did have was Hamilton County. You mentioned putting a fence on top of the berm. I don't think that was something the residents wanted either, and we'll probably do this with just landscaping as much as possible.
In this plan, this version also does show the increase in the landscape buffering versus the one.
Yes.
Ms. DiBaggio?
Actually, this new plan does answer a lot of my questions already. Knocks them out. Just so that I am clear, though, so the entire detention basin is now disappearing with this new plan, and instead everything is going underground?
Well, that's why I was saying it. We're not totally complete.
Okay.
We may end up with some in a basin and some underground. We haven't done the full calculation on that. That's why we were late getting it into Paul on that. We're still trying to figure out what we're going to do, but we will take care of the storm water. I just can't tell you exactly how much is going to be on top or, in a basin, and how much is going to be underground. It may all be underground. I don't really know yet.
All right. I did have one other question, though. Somewhere in all this material, I saw that you currently have 32 employees at corporate.
Yes.
But there are 60 parking spaces. Do you have a lot of visitors? Why do you need all that many?
Well, we're looking to grow,
Okay.
and substantially over the next few years. But we also have franchisees come in for training, and when they come in, we'll get sometimes 10 to 20 franchisees at a time coming in for training. When we open a new store, they send their management staff and everything to our office for training.
All right.
And that bumps up our parking.
That makes sense. All right. I think that actually answers all my questions. Thank you.
Ms. McBride?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I had some questions, and maybe that's a moot point about the finished floor of the building when it was pushed back toward the residential versus the elevation of the single-family homes to the south. The office building is still proposed to be 27 feet?
2 stories.
Yeah, at 27 feet?
Yeah.
Okay. And mechanical equipment, would that be on top of the building, or would that be
Most
ground?
likely on top of the building. Like I said, we haven't got that figured out yet, but most likely on top of the building. That makes
Okay, and that would be screened?
Yes.
And obviously, there's a lot more buffering to the south than there was on that original plan. What kind of hours would the office keep? I mean, is that like an 8 to 5 operation?
Yeah, it's normally 8 to
Monday
5.
through
We
Friday?
don't work on the weekends, thank goodness. It's an 8 to 5. It's an office building.
Right, okay, all right. I mean, my hesitation is that our staff obviously has not had a chance to review this. And, we rely heavily on their opinion and their review. So those are all the comments that I have right now.
All right, thank you. Got a couple of questions. Looks like all on both plans, not knowing which one, the access is off of the grader site. Do you have a cross-access easement in place with graders at this point in time?
No, we do not. That's one thing that would have to be gotten in there. We need one on the other side. I think Paul mentioned that to me the other day. But we did want to give the access across there that the township was asking for.
Okay. I mean, just the orientation of the dumpsters, the only way to access it is really coming off the grader site. That's why I asked the question.
Well, the grader's dumpster is right there also, so we figure whoever they're using will come in, pick up theirs, and then swing right over and pick up ours. Okay. And did not want to get them toward the back. You know how that can be sometimes.
Mm-hmm. And then, we've been presented 2 plans. Which one are we supposed to be really looking at? And, I guess the reason is it'd be really nice, I think, for the commission if we knew which plan we're looking at to approve any sort of zone change, not options of 5 or 6. So
to be honest with you, the second plan that I just gave you, this plan would be the one we would like to go with from listening to the residents and all that. Originally, we pushed the building back, trying to screen, but then from what I was hearing, apparently they did not want to look at the building sitting right there, so we did go back and look at moving it forward. And if we can get a variance on the side yard setback, then that will allow us to do what we're doing here, to lengthen the building a little bit, but move it forward, keep the dumpsters forward, push the parking back closer to the residents, but screen that. And playing with this, we're not totally through with it, but we wanted to get it in and see what everybody's thinking was on it.
All right, thank you very much. Any other person who would like to speak in favor of the application? Okay, now we will turn it over to anyone that would like to speak opposed. Again, if you're speaking opposed, please, if you've not been sworn in, please identify yourself. Sorry about that. Sorry, I got ahead of myself for the future ones. So anyone that would like to speak opposed to the applicant, please come forward, state your name and address, and your affiliation to the case. Yes, ma'am.
Good evening. I am Linda Goggle. I live at 8500 Sunmont. So I am the home in the cul-de-sac, the kite shape right to the, what I'm looking at is the left of the drawing on the screen. And I am not really sure what to say either, because this is the first I've heard of a new plan. So everything I can tell you is based on what I'm seeing right there. And if they have a new plan, then I have not had a chance to review that. My big concern is with a two-story building that close to my home. We are very close. I don't know whether I can show you, but I took a picture from my window. Can I bring that up?
Sure.
And it just, you guys can look at it. It just shows, this is on the edge here. You can see that's the side of the home that's next to me. That's a two-story home. So a two-story building is going to be very high, very close. So I just, wanted you to visually see, because sometimes I think we forget just how close that two-story building is going to be to our backyards. The other concern is the water damage, that is the water that you guys have talked about, and the stormwater stuff. We're really not sure what's going to happen with that. We have a lot of flooding right now. We are lower than Beachmont. There's a lot of runoff with the trees that have already been cleared. We're getting a lot more flooding in our backyards, and we don't know what's going to happen with that in the future. And with properties further east on Beachmont, but in our Sunmont subdivision strip there, so Graders and on up, there have been situations where they have promised to do different things, planted trees, put buffers up, trees have died, nothing's been replaced. All of those yards are still getting flooded. That's not my yard, so I'm not really sure where they are in any process with that, but there's just a whole lot of concern of what that's going to mean to our property, to whether we're going to be having more flooding than we're already having, and whether we will look at, this big two-story building 50, 70 feet from our corner of our house, where we spend all of our time. We built this house in '96. We are the original owners. We could have built this same house in Claremont County at the same time for $40,000 less, but we chose to stay in Hamilton County and in Anderson Township because we like it here. And so I would be really disappointed to see the zoning change and have a big building in my backyard. Again, I don't know about this new plan. I haven't had a chance to look at it. So I thank you so much for your consideration.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak opposed? Yes, sir.
So my name is Tapendra Sinha, and I am the owner of 8538 Sunmont Avenue, which is right behind the Graders. I have the same concern that Linda already mentioned, but with the current situation with the current runoff, even with the graders, their own lot expansion, with the parking lot expansion, and the runoff and the water logging as residents we see, personally, we do not have any confidence on this retail proposal of preserving the natural habitat. Second, the stormwater drains and the catch basins that Hamilton County has built is not designed to suit this much of runoff, because we are seeing a tremendous amount of runoff right now, waterlogged areas of in the backyards where we cannot even go right now, where we used to go. In the last year I took pictures, and I can send those successive pictures, and I can show how bad the situation is right now. So it looks ridiculously ugly right now, and as a residents, we are pretty saddened that this will happen. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak opposed? Yes, sir.
Hi, my name's Ken Chow. I live directly behind Identity.
Could you state your address, please?
It's 8510 Sunmont Drive.
Thank you.
And I think I'm being affected the most on this because I got a nice home, okay? And I had no idea that to build a retail building, I mean, not an office building, that close to my home. I mean, can you imagine having a 2-story building directly behind your house? What kind of privacy is that when when you're walking in your home and you know someone from the retail office is looking at your house the whole time? And I don't mind the retail up front, but like he says, they plan on growing. They may outgrow this building. And where's that building going? That building's going to be there. You're talking about an eyesore. You know, the thing about Anderson Township, we have all these trees, along the driveway. I mean, along the highway. You got the retail space up front, and you got the trees in the back. That's a beautification of Anderson Township. Why do you want to stick an office building that high back there? I mean, there's no other office building like that on Beachmont Avenue. You got Tag, Claremont County. I know you don't want to, you're losing money, but they got eyesores down the street. Why, that's closer to his Buffalo Wings ring that, and he's got plenty of room to grow down there. And there's a bowling alley and a volleyball place directly behind them. And, it doesn't affect residential. That's why I chose to live in Anderson Township, because it's such a great community, but my God, this is awful. Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else like to speak opposed? Yes, ma'am. If you could come up, state your name and address.
I'm Raji, and our address is 8538 Sunmont Drive. I would like to see the pictures, and then I would just...
The one where
the construction
trees
is going on.
Okay.
So this is just for the purpose of construction, or is it expansion because the trees were brought down?
Yeah. So from what staff had said, they did some soil borings. So they had to access the site to, in essence, drill into the ground to understand what sort of soil is there for their construction.
So whatever has been uprooted, they'll be put back, at least some effort to plant something there?
At this point in time, I don't think we can speculate, as we're really looking at how the proposed development would go, not sort of what has impacted the site to date.
Okay. So we were not informed about that. It happened this winter, and we didn't even notice till the time the water started coming in our backyard. Now we have water stagnation. That means mosquitoes, and that means diseases. So that is my concern.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Anyone else like to speak opposed? Yes, sir.
Hi, my name's Mike Daly. I live at 8532 Sunmont, which is really right behind the Graders property. So I just wanted to point out that you may be already aware, I think Paul's brought it up before, that when this community was planned, there was a variance given to Dries to build more densely. So the lots are small, the houses are really close together, The fact that there is a residential buffer to the north and the lots on Prilla to the south are relatively deep, sort of alleviated that congestion. But if we start to encroach on that to the north, it's going to make it worse. So just keep that in mind. It's already dense.
Okay. Thank you. Anyone else like to speak opposed? I'll come back to you. Yes, ma'am.
I'm Vicki Corpus. I live at 8524 Sunmont, right next door to Mike. So I am behind graders, and just our property is also just adjacent to where this will be built. I just have a couple questions, and I apologize for my lack of familiarity with the process, but the design, the second design, we were not sent. We have not seen it. So like my neighbors have said, we can't ask questions or you know, really review that because it was not sent to us. In the case history, we mentioned stormwater, and now we've heard there's been soil tests done. I don't understand how it can be approved when we don't know what the results of the soil tests were. We don't know. At the meeting in February, we asked questions about a water study being done, and we understood that that had to be complete and approved before the county would approve it. And of course, now we've heard the county didn't approve it. But I still have not heard any mention tonight of a stormwater, a study of the drainage. And maybe there'll be a basin, and maybe it'll be underground, and maybe it won't be underground, but it all seems extremely vague. And I will tell you the issues with the water are extremely real and very specific. And the disease, there's documented disease back there when we bought our house, and it's the health of the community is important. And I don't think any of us want to be on the news that we've had disease because of all the mosquitoes from all the standing water, and it really is a very real issue. And if it's not an issue where you live, that's great, but you really have to, like, this needs to be addressed completely. I do want to say we appreciate that they listened to our concerns and moved the building, and we look forward to seeing the second plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir. And for the recording, could you state your name and address again?
Tupendra Sinha, 8538 Sunmont Drive, right behind the Graders expansion. As my background is geology and hydrology, and I have done, in my course of my graduate studies, I have done probably close to 4,000 to 5,000 sampling of soil and groundwater drilling, and I've never seen people cut trees to do soil sampling.
So I will clarify a little bit. There is what you were talking about, but there's also structural capacity of the soils. And my estimation is the soil borings that they did were more about the structural nature of the soils, not the water retention of the soils. So if the applicant at the end wants to speak again and correct me, I will give him that opportunity. But yes, sir.
My name is Tao Huang. I'm living the 8504 Salmont. It's the White House on the picture. And well, it's just one thing that I'd like to point out. This is a live camera on my in my living room window. I want to see the water. You see that it's only this way from yesterday to today. Okay. Not like a whole day. You see the water. Yeah, there's a lot of water run off from each month to the top. Also, you think about if you can see this one is you see the right dot there. That's the proposed building built there. So just look at how close the building at your backyard, the 2-story. Yeah, that's my concern.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Anyone else like to speak opposed?
Good evening. My name is Hope Holden, and I live at 8556 Sunmont. Drive, sorry. I've been a lifelong resident there at the subdivision for 23 years. And the thing I can really attest to is I live directly behind Drive Time, I think it is, the dealership. And the noise level, regardless what time it is 24/7, because I believe that's their business. They have to sell cars. And the previous owner ahead of them, I believe it was Pontiac or Saturn, I'm not sure. You can help me out with that. But they were really good about putting up a fence structure and maintaining it, and they planted a lot of pine trees. And they planted over 6 or 7 pine trees. And I can tell you there's only 2 standing, and it's the very tops of them. I think they've overgrown with weeds and whatnot. But my concern is it's not being kept up, and I'm worried about more development coming along and no one coming along and monitoring or rangering it. So the noise level is my big concern. Water is a huge concern. It floods, and Linda was very verbal about that. We get a lot of water from Beachmont. It's incredible. That's basically my biggest concerns, and I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Anyone else would like to speak?
My name is Jeff Goggle, and I live at 8500 Sunmont. That ranch that you see in the brick there in the background is a single-story house. You're going to put a 2-story building right about where that tree is, maybe a little bit further back. I heard him say he was going to move about 100 feet. That's probably about where it's going to be, so it's going to dwarf those buildings in the back. So I just wanted to mention that. And besides, the buildings behind that's not going to be there, but now it's going to be all pavement. So all of those trees will be gone.
Thank you, sir. Yes, ma'am.
Good evening. My name is Bev Chow. I live at 8510 Sunmont Drive. Our house is on the picture, so I'm really concerned for a lot of different things, but you've heard about the water and him saying maybe it'll be underground. I don't understand it, so I'm asking somebody to help me out here. If it's underground, then we have a sewer already, like in our yard, and the water runs. We get it from 4 different directions right now. I get it from Pamela, I get it from this part of Beachmont, this and this. Our yard is flooded now with the few trees that we now have left. So there is like a ravine, I guess it's called, across the street where the water goes for the sewer underground to the ravine. When we have heavy rains, that fills up to the very tip top. We've all seen it. So I guess if there's not going to be anything on that property to retain it, and all that water is going to be added from this property here, I don't know how it's going to hold it. So it's going to go over across the street, and it's going to flood over there too. Then those people are going to have, we're all on one side. We already know. I just want to show you, I'd like to see how you'd like to have this in your backyard. When you just sold the house and told it's residential, and now they want to change that on us, and I got to live with this, and that's before he's built anything. How would you like that running in your backyard all the time? This isn't like a rare occasion. This is all the time. I have a deck out there. Guess what? We've had tests before. We've had West Nile disease out there before this even happened, because the water just sits there. We have a drainage problem. I don't know how this is going to help us at all. That's my concern. I don't want to live in an office building. My big concern is drainage. I can't use my backyard with my grandson, my dog, nothing. I didn't spend enough money on a house to move to Anderson so I can stay in the house all the time. I think it was wrong that we were told it's residential, and now somebody decides it's okay to change that.
That's okay.
Sorry. I just think it's wrong to change something like this with I think it's very inconsiderate, to be honest with you. Obviously it's going to decrease our home value. If I wouldn't buy this house right now with all the drainage problem I now have. Besides, if you put a 2-story building there and you take away the little bit of appearance I had in the back and privacy, it's gone. Y'all just taking all our property and just letting it sink. And I think it's wrong. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak opposed?
My Michael Rimler, 8543 Sunmont Drive. I actually don't have anything to add. I just wanted to just go on record and state my presence here in support of the neighborhood. And I mean, everything that you've heard sort of against the proposal that was sent in, not the new proposal, I'm in agreement with. That's all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Hi, I'm Kate Daly. I live at 8532 Sunmont Drive, and I too just want to agree with everything that's said. I did just have a picture pulled up on my phone that showed a lake, literally a lake. Our neighbors, the Eckerts, who are not here tonight, had 2 Adirondack chairs sitting there, and it looked like they were sitting in the middle of a lake. And it's a common occurrence, and we are concerned about that getting even worse. And we do not want the neighbors to have a building like that in their backyard with very little space in between. So I am just supporting them and letting you know that it is real. I mean, if you can imagine the little puddles you're seeing in these pictures, and it's in our backyard. Our backyards, we can hardly grow grass anymore. And as one of the other residents said, it's not a pleasant place for children to play, dogs to play. I mean, it's just, it is devaluing our property. If on a rainy day like today we were showing our homes, I think people would say, nah, let's look at something else to the realtor. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, with that, we will open the discussion amongst the commission. I'm sorry, the applicant can come up and, state other responses to the opinions that you've heard, or correct me about my soil boring
No, you're
explanations.
fine on that. I would like to just iterate that we have looked at this and have heard some of the concerns and all that, and that's why we looked at another plan of moving the building forward, and the building would now be 200 feet from the back property line, at least. And the stormwater, to answer the least, is underground. It would be retained underground. It would not be a basin on the ground. It would be underground and released at a controlled rate, to help them understand that a little bit. So we would be taking care of the stormwater from this property. I can't do anything about the other properties, but we can and are required to handle this. So with that, I'll leave it to any other questions you have.
All right, thank you. Any other questions of the applicant?
I just have one, Mr. Davis. The underwater stormwater, you said that is released, so it is not tying into the stormwater pipes, for lack of a better term, that are currently in place in Beachmont?
No, the property slope, as they stated,
Right.
it slopes from Beachmont to the back, so that's the only place we can go with it. So we would have to gather our water up by the county and retain it underground, and it'd be really released at a controlled rate. So whatever water runs off that property would go into catch basins, which would go into underground pipes that would be held in those underground pipes and then released at a lot slower rate than it would normally be released at. And that would have to meet all the county requirements for that.
All right,
That's why I hired this man.
Thank you. All right, discussion amongst the commission. Ms. McBride?
Yeah, I think that there may be some merit to the plan that was given to us this evening, but I would like to have staff review this plan, and I would really like to have the opportunity for the neighborhood to review this plan. So I would suggest that the commission continue the public hearing in progress.
Ms. DiBaggio?
I agree with her that I think it should be continued. Everybody needs a chance to look at it and make sure they understand it.
Okay. Mr. Henson?
No real additional comments other than it's very atypical that it would be my belief that increasing impervious surface might be a good idea, but this does seem an opportunity to allow some engineering to really help mitigate the existing runoff issues that are there. And I hope that that is going to be the case. I did have a quick question too. You mentioned that the
Hamilton County, that we put a privacy fence on top of the berm, and we were willing to do that, but we had some concerns from the residents that they didn't really want to have a fence. They'd rather have landscaping, and we were in agreement with that. And I just want to get that clarified because it's still on the minutes from the Hamilton County, and I want to make sure that we're okay with that and do not need to put a fence there.
I am of the opinion, I think the landscaping that you're proposing on the new berm makes a lot of sense, but it would probably be beneficial to show some additional landscaping around now that the parking lot is a view, some additional landscaping.
Yeah, we'll do whatever we need to do on that to.
Thank you. I'd like to express my opinion also. You know, I do believe that it's probably in the best interest of the township and also the applicant to continue this hearing into next month, with the applicant having time to provide a more detailed landscaping plan, initial site lighting plan, and some more data for the staff to review and also the commission. So unless the applicant has a great opposition, I will make the table open for the commission to make a motion to continue the next month.
Could I just, before we make a motion, also suggest that the applicant might want to do some line of sight drawings so that you can see what you would actually see from some of the homes behind, particularly if the building is moved back, with the buffer or with the mounding and with the landscaping. So with that, I would make a motion that we continue the public hearing in progress for case 1-2019 Anderson Buffalo Wings and Rings, 8501 Beachmont Avenue.
Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay. Can you call roll, please?
Mr. Henson?
Aye.
Ms. DiBiagio?
Aye.
Ms. McBride?
Yes.
Mr. Gothard?
Yes. Thank you very much.
And the April meeting would be on April the 22nd, 5:30, same place. Okay. The PUDs have PUD after them, and then the zone changes have Anderson after them. We should only have two ones, a PUD and the zone change. Are we ready? If you don't want to take a break after this one, you can.
Okay, now we will start the discussion of item number 6 on the agenda, case 2-2019 Anderson. Mr. Drury, if you could please give the staff report.
So the applicant is MA Architects on behalf of Mount Washington Realty Company, who is the property owner. The location is at 6882 and 6900 Beachmont Avenue. The current zoning, one of the parcels is Zone C residence, and the main facility or the existing facility is DD, which is planned multifamily. The request is to approve a rezoning of both of these parcels, the one from C residence, and there is an existing planned district, to combine those parcels into one for a DD planned multifamily residence for both parcels. The request is for an expansion for the Mount Washington Care Center. This would be for 22,000 square foot addition, and then a substantial modification. The original zone change was approved in 1976, so that was case 3, 1976. So this is a double request. One is for rezoning of the C zoning, and then a modification of the final development plan that was approved in 1976. The applicant is proposing a one-story addition for a total of 28 single-bed nursing care units, and this is for the entire facility. The intent is a renovation of the existing double occupancy rooms to convert them to single occupancy rooms. So the addition isn't necessarily increasing occupancy of the entire facility. It's a renovation and facade improvements to the Mount Washington Care Center. The outline parcel, oh, I'm sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. There was a modification in 2002, and this was just to allow for an accessory structure. So this is the site in question, outlined in red, the existing Mount Washington Care Facility. The parcel to the west was a single-family home that was, once it was purchased by Mount Washington Care, it was removed. This is an aerial of the existing facility. This is the vacant parcel. There's single-family residences to the west, and then the Anderson House multifamily apartments to the east. To the south is Beach Acres Parenting Center. This is a topography map of the site. There is a steep decrease in grade, or steep ravine toward the north, toward the northern portion of the site down to the creek. Then there's a slight grade for the remainder of the parcel. This is the zoning map of the surrounding area. The orange is DD, which is planned multifamily. This parcel here is a parcel that's Zone C, and then to the west and to the south is also Zone C, single family residence. This is the site plan, the proposal. The existing facility is here, so the addition would create a courtyard, and the main entrance would be located to the front of the building facing Beachmont Avenue, whereas currently it has a side entrance. They are proposing one curb cut off of Beachmont Avenue with circulation around the entire facility. The parking to the east would remain the same, slightly modified to improve circulation patterns. There would be limited parking added in the front of the building, as well as the parking toward the rear would remain the same. There are 2 detention areas that are proposed with the addition. Currently, there's limited, if any, detention for this site since it was approved in 1976. With the redevelopment, detention is required now, so there is a larger detention basin toward the north that is proposed, and then one toward the south up closer to the Beachmont Avenue. This is the landscaping plan. There are 2 panhandle lots and 2 single-family homes that are adjacent to this site on these 2 parcels here. So the applicant is proposing a solid fence to buffer this single family with landscaping on the outside of the fence, or the side facing the residence, additional screening along this property here, and then additional landscaping in compliance with the township's parking lot landscaping requirements. This is a proposed lighting plan, which is too hard to even see on the screen, so we'll just keep on moving. These are the proposed elevations of the addition. This would be the front facade facing Beachmont Avenue, again with a facade improvement, relocating the front entrance toward Beachmont Avenue, and then this would be the new addition, the west elevation, facing the residence to the west. These are existing site photos. Again, the main entrance. This is the driveway that went to the single-family home that has since been removed. This is the driveway to access the 2 panhandle lots to the rear of the site. This is looking north toward the front entrance of the facility. This is looking across the street at the Beach Acres Parenting Center. This is looking toward the east along Beachmont Avenue. And then this is the east side of the property, the existing parking. As I stated before, this parking will be modified to eliminate this parallel parking situation. So there was, just like the other case, there was a pre-submittal meeting with surrounding property owners, and this was also in February. Some of the same concerns, stormwater was brought up, buffering towards surrounding residential property owners. These were some of the items that were discussed. I'm sorry, this one was actually held in November, not in February. This was held November the 29th. An application was heard before regional planning on March the 7th for the zone change, and this was approved with the conditions that are noted in the staff report. Same as the last case on Beachmont Avenue, a 60-foot half right-of-way is required, so dedication of an additional 10 feet of right-of-way is required for this site, and this is notified on the site plan. Zoning resolution compliance. Everything was compliant with this application. I think the original lighting plan was not in compliance. I believe that that has been corrected. Applicable plans. The future land use plan identifies the C-zone parcel as single family. With the regional planning's staff report on this one, they felt that the text of the plan supports a change to DD, citing surrounding land uses. There were multiple institutional type land uses in this vicinity. Stonecrest Senior Living Facility, which is under construction, which is on the south side of Beachmont Avenue, the Beach Acres Parenting Center. You do have Beach Acres Park. You do have multifamily directly to the east. The Athenaeum, which is further to the west. So there are a mixture of uses in addition to the single-family homes. The sections of the comprehensive plan where we felt were compliant with this development, again, economic health, people and housing, quality of life, and all these are in the staff report. The Beachmont plan identifies a single point of access with this property. The original plan did call for 2 curb cuts, and they have since the Regional Planning Commission, they have consolidated those into 1. The Beachmont plan also identifies an easement to the Anderson House Apartments. The applicant has concerns with this. And really the intent of that cross access is to eliminate curb cuts on Beachmont Avenue, or at least consolidate those, without knowing what is going to happen on the south side of Beachmont Avenue with the Beach Acres Parenting Center, with the Beach Acres Park. Staff was supportive of eliminating that condition that a cross easement be identified on this plan. We felt that the consolidation of curb cuts of their plan was an attempt to at least be in compliance with the Beachmont corridor plan. Design guidelines, the front door is actually being moved toward the roadway, so this is in compliance with the design guidelines. Our trails and walkway plan, the sidewalk is proposed along Beachmont Avenue across the frontage with a connection to the front door. And then the Economic Development Committee did submit a letter of support. So staff's recommendation was approval. There are the 6 conditions that were recommended by the Regional Planning Commission, and then a lighting plan was recommended to be in compliance by Township staff. So I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Drury. We'll start with questions of staff. Mr. Elliff?
Just a couple, and yeah, I did have a question about that cross-access easement, but it looks like that's been taken care of. The staff conditions that you've shown in there, Paul, is that consistent with the conditions the county mentioned as well?
Correct, yes.
That's the same? Okay. The buffer along the west property line, and in the pictures you see there's some not bad, I guess, evergreen trees. I think there's, yeah, that one. Those trees there, was this the one where it said the staff is hopeful that they'll be retained? I couldn't tell from the landscape plan. They kind of showed some existing. That buffer along the west, is that going to be compliant with, when you have the D district up against a residential? Is that satisfactory?
Let me get back to the landscape plan. It's kind of hard to see on this, but there is a 6-foot privacy fence that is proposed across the frontage of this panhandle lot with landscaping on the outside. That would be sufficient to screen the parking area. Then there is no parking along this drive here, but we did strongly recommend that additional evergreen screening to screen that drive be in place. Those residents are here tonight, so they may have a preference. And there are some existing mature trees through here, so there would need to be a balance of keeping the existing mature trees, but also, you know, what could grow underneath of those to provide for screening, or a fence if that's preferred.
Thank you.
Ms. McBride?
Yeah, I don't have anything right now, thank you.
Thank you. Ms. DiBaggio?
I have nothing further.
Mr. Henson?
Paul, what is our drive aisle minimum?
If there's parking off of the drive aisle, it needs to be 24 feet wide. If there's no parking, it can go down to 20 feet.
So is it conceivable that we've got the width on the eastern side of the development? It looks like the smallest bottleneck is about 29 feet.
Which area are you referring?
Southeast corner in the back of the house.
In this area here?
Yeah.
So 20 feet would be required since there's not technically parking off of that corner.
Is that sufficient for a one-way or a two-way?
Two-way.
What I'm getting at is, it seems like the drive on the western side of the building is, I understand the one-way flow of traffic, but it's really kind of wholly unnecessary. And it seems to be a good opportunity to preserve some of the old growth trees and existing landscaping and vegetation that exists there, while also reducing impervious surface.
I think the applicant can probably address that.
Thank you. If the applicant would like to address the commission, please. And please state your name, address, and affiliation to the case.
Yeah. Hello, my name is Russ Garber. I'm with M&A Architects. My address for notices is 775 Yard Street, Columbus, Ohio, 43212. I'd just like to thank the staff for doing a great job of explaining the project. Just a couple quick things. We do recognize, obviously, the township wanting to clean up the curb cuts along Beachmont, so we are in agreement with reducing one, and we are pleased to hear that there's some agreement that the cross-access easement really provides a safety concern for our geriatric residents that live at this facility. As far as the mature trees along that side, it does look like we are keeping better than a half dozen to 8. I'm trying to count on our updated plan along that side. You can see that we did make consideration to bend and move that roadway in so we can get additional plantings in there so that we can get a pretty good mix of plants and fencing all along that property. So it's pretty, along that western property line is pretty dense. So there is a mix of both new growth, which would be evergreen trees, and then some of the existing evergreens and deciduous trees there. So I think the owner has done a nice job of screening that. Any other concerns that you guys have, I'll be available to answer any questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Henson, any questions of the applicant?
So I think what I'm hearing you say too, though, is that you do want to retain the drive on that side of the building. There's some need for it.
Correct. Yes, we would like to retain it.
Ms. DiBaggio, any questions of the applicant?
The only question I have concerns, as I look at this, you still have it up there, the center, just curiosity as to what is the center of that building going to be? Is that a courtyard? Is it green space?
That's exterior space in the very center there, so that would not have a roof over it. So it would be courtyard space that would be secure space for our most frail residents to go into to have access to the outdoors and outdoor activities.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have.
You're welcome.
Ms. McBride?
Yeah, I don't have any questions for the applicant.
Okay. Mr. Elf?
Could you do the detention calculations for this?
We did, yes. I did not personally, but
There
yes,
was
we had ours.
Okay, but you're familiar though, somewhat. There were some remarks in the staff report about there being some runoff, perhaps attributed to this development. I'm guessing the new detention will impact that. Is it oversized? Is it just for the new stuff? What is it?
I can tell you that there is no detention currently on the site, or very little. So this plan addresses the existing and the new. Let me see if our civil engineer is here. Maybe it can answer it more.
Okay. You could state your name and address, please.
Troy Messer. 7162 Glenmore Drive, Westchester, Ohio, 45011. I want to speak to the detention, I guess, back here. And back in the 70s, the drainage was basically taken over the hill. And so what we're going to try to do here in this thing, there's two outlets that release to the back east, northeast corner. One kind of actually hangs over to the property to the east a little. And then there's an overflow, larger pipe when the waters fill up on the east side of this building in the parking lot that get into a 24-inch pipe that kind of runs parallel with the property and probably, I'm guessing, 25 feet maybe in from the property line. We're going to be gathering this up with new storm design and get both of those pipes gathered in one spot, brought into the detention basin, and actually should go back to that existing condition for where it wasn't detained in the past, and actually detain this water for the entire site with existing as well. We control it and release it down. We've talked with Hamilton County. One of their comments was to make sure the storm gets down and released low and not up high. So we haven't actually got to that final detail of how that would be. It may be a combination of manholes that drop that storm down in there, but some of the thought there would be that would be some removal of trees working its way down there. And we asked about an option to run aerial, and they were okay with that as well to do that, but that's something we'll work closely with our geotech in Hamilton County and my storm design to basically work that storm water back down in the basin. The other basin that's up in the southwest corner, there's probably dividing this into a quad where the new building is being expanded. That southwest corner has drainage area that kind of releases back to Beachmont Avenue, so we're going to try to incorporate also design there as well. Not only will it meet the Hamilton County regulations requirements for that, but also the state OEPA water quality volumes as well. So.
Any questions of the engineer?
Yeah, I have another one for Mr. Messer. Did you guys do the landscaping plan on this also?
Yes.
So that driveway that Mr. Hinson pointed out, is that spaced to avoid the drip lines of those existing trees? Do you know?
It is not necessarily spaced to avoid the drip lines. There's some I see a little bit of it.
Right. Okay. Thank you. I saw her on her. Yeah. Thank you. Oh, okay.
So some of those trees are being saved there in that corner, that southwest corner that you're saying. We're trying to miss it by bending it around those as well. But yeah, so we're not, some of those drip lines are probably, will be over those edges. We'll do our best grading wise to make sure that we're keeping it about where grade is out there. So we're not, cutting and filling around those roots.
Okay. Ms. McBride?
Sorry, so if I could, I'd like to continue on with those trees, because you've got the one corner, the southwest corner of that drive is about 8 inches to a foot maybe off the trunk of one of those trees. So, I mean, they're not going to survive, right?
Oh, pardon me? Yeah, there's probably one, it appears, that's probably pretty closer. That would probably have to come out there.
I mean, getting under the drip line of really any of these established trees, I mean, you're just showing the pavement into the drip line. The grading obviously is going to go beyond that, so you're going to lose probably almost most of these trees along here. Is there a reason that drive is 24 feet wide? It doesn't have any parking off of it?
Just for emergency vehicle access and turning movements in and out with, let's say, the deliveries for food and that kind of thing. So there's a truck size that'll be similar probably to what the fire department will require to get through here.
Yeah, Paul, I mean, have we heard from our fire department that they need 24 feet as opposed to 20 feet?
No, not necessarily. They just initially reviewed the plan and said they were okay with the plan.
So we could take that down to, if it were to go forward, to 20 feet, because there isn't any delivery entrance or anything along that side of the building either.
No, but we'll have to take in consideration, though, those turning movement to those vehicles to make that 90-degree turn in there. That was kind of one of the reasons why we're trying to utilize that drive straight out in the past. But if we're going to be making that bend, we could probably shrink that size of that pavement, as you're saying. We'll just have to keep an eye on that radius return.
Yeah, I mean, the issue is you're representing to us that all of these mature trees are going to stay, and they're not.
Yeah, I'm going to guess maybe that the one that I see right on where it's making the 90-degree bend, that's a little close. The rest of them, I mean, to the center of the trees, I don't have. Like I said, we're going to try to be right at grade. We're not doing a lot of cutting through there.
I mean, my experience is you normally put the construction fencing up around the drip line, and you've got pavement going under the drip line.
Yeah.
So, okay. Thank you.
Any other questions, Ms. DiBaggio, Mr. Henson? I've got a couple questions for the applicant in general. If you're not increasing the total number of beds, why is the parking count actually increasing? Where are deliveries going to be occurring on site?
Yeah, we're not increasing the number of actual beds because we're just, as you mentioned, we're taking some semi-privates out to create private rooms. The deliveries are happening in the back. I don't know if anyone has a pointer, but it's the existing, that's not changing to where it is currently.
Okay.
There will be, now that we do have some loop access around, currently when there's emergency vehicles coming up, ambulances, they're mixing between the front door and the back door of the building. There would be at the back side of the building, on the north side, there would be an exit there would be more convenient for them to do their emergency services there and ambulance services there. What was your other question? I'm sorry.
Why are you increasing the parking count if you're not increasing the bed count?
It's just because the existing parking right now is just tight. There's just, it's congested on the site right now to give some relief, especially during shift change when you got the first staff still there as the second shift is coming in, so to take off some of that congestion. It's also, as you know, the industry is going, the long-term care industry is very difficult. So there's a lot of short-term care where it's rehab to home care, and some of those residents stay for 2 weeks, maybe 90 days, 30-day time frame. Unfortunately, our long-term care residents don't get the amount of visitors that they should get. However, our short-term care residents do tend to get slightly more visitors, so we do want to be able to have parking spaces for them. So it's really just handling the current congestion.
So if to facilitate saving more of the existing trees, losing 2 to 3 or 4 parking spaces could be studied as an alternative to slide the drive a little bit narrower, still create the turning radiuses that we spoke about earlier?
I'd have to confer with the client. I'm not. I'm filling in for a colleague, so I haven't been in all of the meetings as to why that actual count is the way it is, and so I wouldn't want to say something against it was done maybe by the regional commission, but sure, we could take it under advisement.
Okay. All right, thank you very much. Anyone else like to speak in favor of the application? Okay, without seeing no hands, we will start. Anyone would like to speak opposed to the application? Please raise your hand. Again, please state your name, address.
My name's Mark Jacobson. My address is 6884 Beachmont. I'm the north panhandle lot in the back. And I talked to Paul before the meeting, and we're concerned about the fence, and you've addressed the solid fence. But there was questions of the offset of the fence off of the property line. It's not specified on the drawings. And it's also not specified the length of that fence. It goes to the back corner of or past my back corner, but it doesn't show how far up it's going to go, so I need that. So the offset of the property line, I'd like to understand that. And then the other thing with the lighting, is it going to be deflective that I'm not going to look at it in my windows? The lighting in that way, regardless. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak opposed? Yes, sir.
Hi. My name's Albert Jacobs. I'm with 6880, which would be the panhandle lot to the south of the one he just talked about. My grandparents owned all that land when I was a little kid, and my mom just died at 6880, but I'm familiar with the property. So, Paul, could you take your pointer and go down the west property line for a minute?
Just right through here?
Yeah, right. Yeah, keep going. No, go north. Further. A little more, about another inch more. Yeah, right about there. Now, right next to the property line, it may be a little bit over. It is a historic tree that you probably don't know about, but about 60 years ago, it's a shagbark hickory, which are very slow growing, and it was in the newspaper that it was the largest one in Ohio. That was 60 years ago. So I stopped and measured it today, and it's 84 inches at the base and 49 inches thick at this high. And I was just concerned, and I remember the tree when I was a kid. We'd have picnics under it and so forth, and it's been there before Anderson was a township, before Ohio was a state, probably before the United States was a country. And I was a little concerned with that fence, and that we ought to take some consideration for that, maybe offset the fence, or just make sure that that thing survives, because it's a keeper. That's all.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak opposed? All right. Without seeing any hands, we'll start discussions amongst the commission. If the applicant would like to address any of the comments, I will remember this next one, I promise. Address any of the comments that you heard from the opponents.
Yeah, I could just about the comment about the fence. We can get you the dimensions, but it is staggered. At least it's got to be at least 4 feet off the property line, and it looks like it extends on our plan. You can see that it extends south beyond the parcel to the northwest that was under concern, and it's so I just wanted to address that. It does extend past the southern part of that property.
The tree that the gentleman was just talking about doesn't seem to show up on the landscape plan.
It's probably in a cluster of other trees, and typically our survey crew won't go pick out an individual tree when there's a cluster of tight trees in the area. We'll just outline that in a dash form. So if that tree is needed to be shot, we can individually locate that tree.
Yeah, because this doesn't even indicate the group of trees.
It's not on our parcel.
I don't know. I really don't know what tree that is per se that he's talking about.
Well, can you pull up the aerial again, please?
I've got a picture of it.
I have, well, I don't know if it's in the presentation. We had a shot from the back parking lot, but I don't think it's,
Yeah, it's
it
way
would be
back there.
back over here somewhere. Possibly, I'm not sure. Well,
Can we see it?
Yeah.
Three pictures of it if you go to the right.
This way?
Yeah.
Is that on their property or your property?
Very close.
Okay.
It may be partially on my brother's property now, but I think if you surveyed, it'd probably be mostly on theirs. And I just didn't want to see that thing taken down to put
Right.
a plastic fence up or something.
Right.
It's
Okay.
really it's a special thing.
Yeah.
Is it right next to the house?
Well,
It's right on the property line, I think he's saying.
it's this big one right here.
Yeah,
That whole
okay.
right, thank you. Any other questions of the applicant? Okay, I've got one question of the applicant. You talked about the stormwater discharge being aerial. Could you describe to the commission a little bit more of what you meant by aerial?
I think as far as the proposed potential,
The potential, yes.
it's just outside the ground and actually buried underneath the ground. So that was an option, let's say, that I was asking back to Hamilton County, because what they were saying is they want to be able to get the storm down to the low elevation. So what you typically do is you'll come into a manhole, drop a vertical depth, come back out at a shallower grade, and probably drop another manhole to get down, because I think we're looking at about 40 feet of drop down. My concern with that is the excavation to be able to install that, and the current root system that's kind of holding that embankment of that hill slope there would be undermined, so to speak, on that. So not that we've decided which way to go, it's just that I was asking back to the county, would it be okay if we were to run over top of the ground, so we're not going to excavate? That would still require some anchoring of the pipe down in the ground, but not a big swath the entire way to bring the pipe down. So area would be outside the ground, but still bringing it down to a low elevation by the creek.
Discharge. Okay. Thank you. So discussion amongst the commission. Mr. Henson. Okay. Ms. DiBaggio.
Overall, I like the plan. I do think that we should think about narrowing that drive on the west side to protect those trees, and especially I think special care should be given to the tree that was brought up by Mr. Jacobs today.
Okay, thank you. Ms. McBride.
One question, just back to Paul. We would see a final development plan on this?
Correct. Some of these conditions, if you're concerned with, can be addressed during the final development plan.
Okay. All right. Yeah, as my fellow commissioner here to my left has said, I'm concerned about the representation of the existing trees that are indicated to remain, but I really don't see how they can under the current configuration. So I would definitely want to see that drive aisle on the west side of the property reduced to 20 feet, understanding that they're obviously going to have a turning radius at the southwest corner. But I would also want to see a tree survey along the western property line, locating those existing trees.
All right, thank you. Mr. Ella.
I was really impressed with the design. I think it's incredible looking, and I like the idea too that they're expanding it for the quality of the residents to have single family or single occupancy in the houses. So when we have the commercial that butts into the residential, the buffering is really an important part. The engineering company has a very skilled landscape architecture department, or landscapers on staff there, so I know they can come up with a really good plan. It's not unusual to make special efforts to protect a valuable tree. What you do is you show it on the plan, even if it's off-site. Your roots are not off-site necessarily, and it's marked carefully, and then before the equipment gets out there, you go put a fence around it so everybody stays out of it, and we can protect those trees, which are important in Anderson Township. So the other thing I think might give a little thought, it was interesting, is how the emergency vehicles access that building. I was surprised to hear that sometimes they go to the front and sometimes to the back. I guess that makes sense depending on where the patient is, but it could be a little tricky reducing some of those radius if the equipment actually goes around all the way around and has to make some of those turns. So I think that'll need to have a look, because the emergency vehicles do make a good amount of runs to these type of facilities. So yeah, I think it's doable. Just little more look at the some of those details and protecting those residential. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Olive. Again, we are just tonight looking at the rezoning, knowing that the final development plan is coming back to us, and that final development should address some of the issues and concerns that you've heard today and provide a lot more detail on its final execution. So with that statement, I'd like to open the commission for a motion.
I would put forth a motion on case 2-2019 Anderson, proposed addition to Mount Washington Care Center, to recommend approval of the rezoning from C residence to double D Plan Multiple Residence District at 6882 Beachmont Avenue, and to approve a substantial modification to case 3-1976 for the Mount Washington Care Center, based on the recommendations of staff and the recommendation of the Hamilton County Regional Planning Commission, with the elimination of condition number 3 from the Hamilton County Regional Planning Commission, which was the access easement to the eastern property, and with the additional condition that there be an existing tree survey done on the western property line, and that additional care be given to the landscaping and buffer plan for that western property line.
Thank you. May I have a second?
Second.
Okay, Mr. Olive, second. Please call roll.
Mr. Henson?
Aye.
Ms. DiBiagio?
Yes.
Ms. McBride?
Yes.
Mr. Eliff?
Yes.
Mr. Gothard?
Yes. Thank you very much. We'd like to take a 5-minute recess, and we will reconvene and then start back up. So thank you very much.